Commander Ben Torres stood at the viewport of the starship Unity, watching the massive alien structure grow larger as they approached. The Zephyrian capital ship was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It stretched for miles, its surface covered in crystalline towers that sparkled like diamonds against the black of space. After 3 years of traveling through hyperspace, they had finally reached their destination. "Sir, we're receiving their docking instructions," reported Communications Officer Lisa Park from her station. "They're directing us to Bay 7. Ben nodded, straightening his formal diplomatic uniform. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on his shoulders. This was the first contact between humans and the Zephyrian Empire. A powerful alien civilization that controlled over half the known galaxy. Everything had to go perfectly. "Remember the briefings, everyone," Ben said to his small crew. "The Zephyrians value protocol above all else. We follow their customs exactly as Dr. Walsh explained. No sudden movements, no direct eye contact with anyone above our rank, and always wait to be spoken to first." Dr. Sarah Walsh, their xenobiologist and cultural expert, looked up from her datapad. "The translator devices should handle most communication issues. Just speak clearly and avoid idioms or slang. Their language is very literal." The docking process took another hour. Ben used the time to review the mission parameters one final time. Earth's government had spent enormous resources to make contact with the Zephyrians. Trade agreements, technology sharing, and protection from hostile alien species all hung in the balance. The Zephyrian Empire was known for its military might and advanced technology, but also for its rigid social structure and unforgiving nature toward those who broke protocol. When the airlock finally opened, Ben was surprised by what he saw. The Zephyrion who greeted them looked nothing like the fuzzy images they had received through long-range communications. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, the creature had a sleek, insectoid body covered in what appeared to be natural armor plating. Its head was elongated with large, multifaceted eyes that shimmered with an inner light. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in delicate but strong-looking hands. "I am Commander Zix of the Royal Guard," the alien said through a small device attached to its throat. The translator made its voice sound mechanical but clear. "You are the humans from the planet called Earth." "Yes," Ben replied, bowing slightly as he had been instructed. "I am Commander Ben Torres, representing the United Earth government. We come in peace, seeking dialogue and friendship." Commander Zix studied them for a long moment. "You will follow me. Queen Valana has agreed to grant you an audience. This is a great honor. Many species wait decades for such an opportunity." They walked through corridors that seemed carved from living crystal. The walls pulsed with soft, ever-changing colors that Ben realized must be some form of communication or decoration. Other Zephyrians moved through the passages with purpose, their multiple arms allowing them to carry out complex tasks while walking. None of them looked at the human delegation directly. "Their society is based on strict hierarchy," Dr. Walsh whispered to Ben as they walked. "Everyone knows their place and stays in it. The Queen is at the top, followed by various noble castes, then workers, then servants." The throne room was vast, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. Thousands of Zephyrians lined the walls, all standing perfectly still. At the far end of the room, on a throne that seemed to be made from a single enormous crystal, sat Queen Valana. Ben had expected her to be similar to Commander Zix. But Queen Valana was magnificent in a way that took his breath away. She was larger than the other Zephyrians, perhaps 9 feet tall, with crystalline wings that spread behind her like stained glass windows. Her armor plating was a deep blue color that shifted to purple and green as the light hit it. Most striking were her eyes, which were larger and more complex than those of her subjects. Filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human, the delegation was led to a position 20 feet from the throne and told to wait. Ben could feel the eyes of every Zephyrian in the room upon them. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, Queen Valana spoke. Her voice was deeper than Commander Zix's, with a musical quality that the translator couldn't quite capture. "Humans from Earth, you have traveled far to reach our domain. For what purpose do you come before us?" Ben stepped forward, keeping his eyes focused on a point just below the queen's face, as he had been instructed. Your Majesty, we come seeking understanding between our peoples. Earth wishes to establish peaceful relations with the Zephyrian Empire. We hope to learn from each other and perhaps find ways to work together for the benefit of both our civilizations. The queen was silent for a long moment. Understanding, she repeated, an interesting concept. Before we can speak of such things, you must first declare your rank within our court. All who appear before the throne must have a place in our hierarchy. Had been prepared for this, Dr. Walsh had explained. That the Zephyrians couldn't function without. Knowing exactly where everyone stood in their social order, a small device was brought forward. Its screen displaying various options in both Zephyrian symbols and English text. Choose your rank from among those available, Queen Vallana commanded. Ben looked at the screen. The options were numerous. Servant, advisor, guard, scholar, merchant, craftsman, worker, and many others. Each came with specific duties and privileges within Zephyrian society. He had planned to choose advisor, which would give him a respectable position while not claiming too much authority. But as he reached for the screen, something went wrong. The device flickered, its screen jumping between different displays. The translation software seemed to be struggling with some of the options. Ben could see Dr. Walsh behind him, her face pale with concern. Technical difficulties, Commander Zik said, with what might have been embarrassment. Please choose from the audible list. A voice began reciting the ranks in English, but the audio was crackling and distorted. Ben tried to focus, but his mind was elsewhere. The stress of the mission, the long journey, and the formal atmosphere were taking their toll. His thoughts drifted to his wife Maria, who had died in a transport accident just before the mission launch. He had almost refused to go, but she had made him promise to see it through. The voice continued listing ranks, but the audio kept cutting out. Ben heard servant, then static, then scholar, then more static. He was thinking about Maria, about how she would have loved to see this amazing alien civilization. When the voice said something that sounded like Harold, but the audio distortion made it unclear, without really thinking. His mind still on his late wife, Ben said, "Husband?" The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Every Zephyrian in the throne room turned to stare directly at him, their multifaceted eyes wide with shock. The silence that followed was so complete that Ben could hear his own heartbeat. Queen Vallana rose slowly from her throne, her wings spreading to their full span. When she spoke, her voice carried a tone that the translator couldn't interpret, but Ben could tell it was significant. "You claim the rank of husband," she said, each word carefully pronounced. "This is a sacred position in our society. Are you certain of your choice?" Ben felt the blood drain from his face as he realized what had happened. Dr. Walsh was frantically checking her datapad behind him. Commander Zix looked as shocked as his alien features would allow, but there was no way to take it back now. Any change would be seen as weakness or deception, either of which could doom the entire mission. "I am certain, Your Majesty," Ben managed to say. Though his voice sounded strange to his own ears, Queen Vallana stepped down from her throne and began walking toward him. With each step, her crystalline armor chimed softly, creating an almost musical sound. The other Zephyrians in the room began to move, forming a large circle around Ben and his crew. "The rank of husband is not one that can be claimed lightly," the queen said as she approached. "It is a bond of equals, a sacred union that grants both authority and responsibility. The husband of the queen rules alongside her, shares in all decisions, and becomes the father of the next generation." Ben's mind raced. This was far worse than he had imagined. He had somehow accidentally proposed marriage to an alien queen. The diplomatic implications were staggering. "Your Majesty," he began, trying to find a way to explain the misunderstanding without causing offense. "Silence," Queen Vallana commanded, raising one of her 4 hands. She was now standing directly in front of him, close enough that he could see his reflection in her compound eyes. "The role of husband cannot be claimed by mere words. It must be earned through trial and proof of worthiness." She turned to address the assembled Zephyrians. "Behold, the human claims the right to stand beside your queen as equal and partner. This claim will be tested according to our ancient laws." The crowd began to hum, a low, vibrating sound that seemed to resonate through the crystal structure of the ship. Ben realized this was some kind of ceremonial response. Queen Valana turned back to him. "There are 3 trials that must be completed before the bond can be established. The trial of leadership, where you must prove your ability to guide others. The trial of strength, where you must demonstrate your power to protect the realm. And the trial of wisdom, where you must show the depth of your understanding, Your Majesty." Dr. Walsh spoke up from behind Ben, her voice tight with stress. "Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The commander may have misspoken due to the translation difficulties." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Queen Valana's attention fixed on Dr. Walsh, and Ben could see the scientist fighting not to step backward. "Are you suggesting," the Queen said slowly, "that your leader speaks without thought? That his word cannot be trusted?" "No, Your Majesty," Ben said quickly, stepping slightly in front of Dr. Walsh. "My colleague is simply concerned for my well-being. I stand by my words." Queen Valana studied him for a long moment. There was something in her expression that Ben couldn't read, but he had the feeling she was weighing more than just his words. "Very well," she said finally. "You have 7 days to prepare. The trials will begin at the rising of the 3rd moon. Until then, you will be given quarters, appropriate to your claimed station and access to our archives, so that you may better understand what you have. Undertaken." She gestured to Commander. "Zik, see that the humans are properly housed. The one who would be husband will stay in the royal wing. His companions may remain in the diplomatic quarters." As the crowd began to disperse, Queen Valana moved close to Ben one final time. "Human," she said, her voice now quiet enough that only he could hear. "I do not know if your claim was made in ignorance or calculation. But know this, the trials are not merely ceremonial. They are tests of true worthiness, and failure carries consequences that extend far beyond personal embarrassment." She paused, her great eyes studying his face. "However, I find myself curious about your kind. Your species is unknown to us, yet you have traveled farther than any civilization we have encountered to reach our domain. Perhaps there is more to humanity than appearances suggest." Before Ben could respond, she turned and walked away, her wings catching the light as she moved. The throne room began to empty, leaving Ben standing with his crew in the vast crystal chamber. "Sir," Communications Officer Park said quietly, "what exactly just happened?" Ben looked around at the alien architecture, at the strange beauty of the Zephyrian ship, and at his crew's worried faces. "I think," he said slowly, "I just accidentally got engaged to an alien queen." Dr. Walsh was frantically scrolling through her datapad. "According to the cultural files, the position of royal consort in Zephyrian society is incredibly powerful, but the trials are real tests, not ceremonies. Past candidates who failed them were exiled or worse." "How much worse?" Ben asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "The files are unclear, but several historical records mention candidates who simply disappeared after failing the trials." Commander Zix approached them, his mechanical translator giving his words a formal tone. "If you will follow me, I will show you to your quarters. The human who claims royal partnership will need to begin preparation immediately. The trials have not been attempted by an outsider in over 3 centuries. As they walked through the crystal corridors, Ben tried to process what had happened. A simple translation error had somehow escalated into a situation that could determine not just his fate, but the future relationship between humanity and one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. He thought about Maria again, wondering what she would say if she could see him now. She had always told him that his tendency to speak before thinking would get him in trouble someday. He had never imagined it would be trouble on quite this scale. The royal wing of the ship was even more magnificent than the throne room. Ben's quarters were a suite of rooms carved from living crystal that pulsed with soft, warm light. The main chamber was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with a ceiling that showed a projection of the stars outside. "The archives are accessible through any wall interface," Commander Zix explained. Touching a section of crystal that immediately lit up with symbols and text, "You may request any historical or cultural information you need. Food will be provided according to your species requirements. After the Zephyrian left, Ben stood alone in the alien luxury of his temporary home. The magnitude of what he faced was beginning to sink in. He had 7 days to prepare for trials that could determine the fate of human-Zephyrian relations. More immediately, he had 7 days to figure out how to survive tests that had killed alien candidates who presumably understood Zephyrian culture far better than he. Did he walk to the star display on the ceiling and found the tiny point of light that was humanity's sun, impossibly distant across the galaxy? Tomorrow he would begin preparing for trials he didn't understand, in a culture he barely knew, all because of a moment of distraction and a broken translator. But as he stood there, looking up at the stars, Ben felt something he hadn't expected. Alongside the fear and uncertainty, there was a spark of excitement. This was why humanity had reached for the stars in the first place. This was the adventure that previous generations had only dreamed of. Whatever happened in the trials ahead, Ben Torres was about to make history. The question was whether that history would be remembered as humanity's greatest diplomatic triumph or its most spectacular failure. Ben Torres spent his first day in the royal quarters trying to understand what he had gotten himself into. The crystal walls responded to his touch, displaying vast amounts of information about Zephyrian history, culture, and the trials he would face. What he learned was both fascinating and terrifying. The Zephyrian Empire had existed for over 10,000 years, built on a foundation of rigid hierarchy and absolute order. Queens ruled for centuries, choosing their consorts through the ancient trial system. The last outsider to attempt the trials had been a member of a species called the Valorians, 300 years ago. According to the records, he had failed the trial of strength and been exiled to a remote mining colony. Dr. Walsh visited him on the second day, bringing translated files and a worried expression. Ben, I've been going through everything we know about these trials. The good news is that they're not just physical tests. The bad news is that they're designed to test qualities that are fundamental to Zephyrian society. Which are? Ben asked, studying a holographic display that showed the layout of the trial chambers. Order, hierarchy, and absolute logic, she replied. Everything about their culture is based on knowing your place and following established patterns. The trials test whether a candidate can think like a Zephyrian ruler. Ben frowned. But I don't think like a Zephyrian. I'm human. Exactly. That's either going to be your greatest weakness or your greatest strength. The third day, Commander Zix arrived to escort Ben to a meeting with the trial overseers. These were ancient Zephyrians, whose job was to ensure the trials were conducted according to tradition. Their crystalline armor had a different quality than the others Ben had seen, almost translucent with veins of silver running through it. Human Torres, the lead overseer, said through his translator, "You have claimed a rank that requires proof of worthiness. We will explain what you must face." They led him to a vast chamber where 3 distinct areas had been prepared. The first was a circular platform surrounded by holographic displays showing star maps and trade routes. The second was an arena with various obstacles and what looked like combat equipment. The third was a simple room with a single chair facing a blank crystal wall. "It's the trial of leadership," the overseer explained, gesturing to the platform. "You will be given a scenario that threatens the stability of the empire. You must resolve it using the tools and authority of a ruler. The scenario is real, taken from current events. Your decisions will have actual consequences." Ben felt his stomach tighten. "You mean this isn't a simulation? The trial serves the empire as well as tests the candidate. The problem you will face has been waiting for resolution. Previous attempts by our advisors have failed." They moved to the arena. The trial of strength. You will face 3 champions in single combat. Victory requires defeating all 3 through whatever means you choose. Weapons and armor will be provided. Ben looked at the weapons rack, which held implements designed for Zephyrian physiology. Nothing looked like it would work well for human hands. "What if I can't use your weapons?" "Then you must find another way," the overseer replied. "Strength is not always measured in the same manner." The final chamber seemed almost peaceful by comparison. The trial of wisdom. You will be asked a question that has puzzled our greatest minds. The answer must demonstrate understanding of truth that goes beyond simple knowledge. After the tour, Ben returned to his quarters feeling overwhelmed. 3 days remained until the trials began, and he had no idea how he was going to succeed. That evening, he was surprised by an unexpected visitor. Queen Valana arrived without ceremony, her crystalline wings folded behind her as she entered his main chamber. Ben immediately stood and bowed, but she waved for him to sit. "I came to speak with you privately," she said, settling onto a crystal formation that shaped itself into a chair as she sat, away from the overseers and protocol. "Your Majesty," Ben began, but she held up a hand. "Call me Valana. If you were to be my consort, we should speak as equals." She studied his face with those large, complex eyes. "Tell me truthfully, human. Was your claim made by accident or design?" Ben considered lying, but something in her expression suggested she would know. "Accident, Your Majesty Valana. I misheard the translation and was thinking about my wife when I spoke." "Your wife?" Her head tilted slightly. "You have already bonded with another of your species?" "She died before I left Earth," Ben said quietly. "We were bonded for 8 years. She was the most important thing in my life." Valana was silent for a long moment. "I see. And yet you claimed the rank of husband with another. This seems contradictory. It was a mistake. But now I'm trapped by it, and I can't fail because it would destroy any chance of alliance between our peoples." "You care more about your species than your own survival?" Ben thought about it. "I care about doing what's right. My wife always said that when you make a mistake, you face the consequences and try to learn from them." Something in Valana's expression shifted. "Your wife sounds wise. What was her name?" "Maria. She was a teacher, specialized in helping children from different cultures learn together." Ben smiled sadly. "She would have loved to meet you, to learn about your people. She would approve of your current situation." Ben laughed, though there was no humor in it. "She would think I was an idiot for getting into this mess. But she would also tell me to stop feeling sorry for myself and figure out how to make the best of it." Valana stood, her wings catching the light as she moved. "Your wife was indeed wise. Perhaps you should listen to her advice." After she left, Ben spent the next 2 days studying everything he could about the problems facing the Zephyrian Empire. He learned about trade disputes between colonies, resource shortages, and conflicts with neighboring species. He also studied human history, looking for examples of how his people had solved similar problems. The day of the trials arrived with ceremony that filled the entire ship. Thousands of Zephyrians gathered in observation chambers that surrounded the trial areas. Ben was given formal robes that had been modified for his human physique, and escorted to the first trial by a procession of guards. Queen Valana sat on a portable throne overlooking the trial of leadership platform. The overseers explained the scenario as Ben took his position at the central console. 3 Zephyrian colonies are in dispute over mining rights to an asteroid field, the lead overseer announced. Colony Alpha claims historical precedent. Colony Beta argues greater need due to population. Colony Gamma asserts superior mining technology. Each refuses to compromise. The dispute threatens to escalate to violence, which would destabilize the entire sector. The holographic display is activated, showing Ben detailed information about each colony, their resources, populations, and capabilities. Traditional Zephyrian law was clear. The colony with the strongest legal claim should receive the mining rights. But Ben could see that approach would leave the other 2 colonies in desperate situations. Ben studied the data for nearly an hour while thousands of Zephyrians watched in silence. Then he began to speak. "The fundamental problem is that each colony is thinking only of itself," he said, his words translated and broadcast throughout the ship. "Colony Alpha has history, but lacks the population to fully exploit the resources. Colony Beta has great need, but limited technology. Colony Gamma has the best equipment, but fewer people than Beta." He manipulated the holographic displays, showing new projections. Instead of one colony taking everything, they should work together. Colony Alpha provides the legal framework and historical knowledge. Colony Beta contributes workers. Colony Gamma supplies technology. They split the profits, according to their contributions. The overseers looked confused. This is unprecedented. Our law requires a single authority. Then create a new legal structure, Ben replied. A joint venture that benefits everyone instead of creating winners and losers. Stable partnerships are stronger than forced hierarchies. The chamber erupted in discussion as Zephyrians debated this radical concept. Queen Valana raised a hand for silence. The proposal will be tested. If it succeeds, the trial of leadership is passed. The second trial began immediately. Ben was brought to the arena where 3 Zephyrian warriors waited. Each was larger and stronger than him, armed with weapons he barely understood. The overseer explained that he could choose any equipment available, but the combat would be real. Ben looked at the weapons rack and armor display, then walked past them to examine the arena itself. The space was circular, about 50 meters across, with various obstacles and barriers scattered throughout. The floor was smooth crystal that reflected the lights above. "I choose no weapons," Ben announced, causing another stir among the observers. "Then you forfeit the trial," the overseer said. "No, I choose to use the arena itself." The first warrior approached Ben with confidence, wielding a staff-like weapon that crackled with energy. Ben ran toward the nearest obstacle, a tall crystal pillar, and dove behind it just as the energy weapon fired. The shot hit the crystal and reflected back toward other surfaces, creating a web of ricocheting energy that forced the warrior to take cover. Ben used his smaller size and human agility to move quickly between obstacles, staying ahead of his opponents while studying their movements. He noticed that the Zephyrians fought with precise, coordinated attacks but seemed confused when their formations were disrupted. When the second warrior tried to corner him, Ben climbed onto one of the obstacles and jumped to another. Using human flexibility that the Zephyrians couldn't match, from his elevated position, he began moving obstacles around the arena. Changing the battlefield's layout, the third warrior made the mistake of pursuing Ben up a series of stepped platforms. Ben waited until the Zephyrian was climbing, then pushed a loose crystal block that started a cascade of falling obstacles. All 3 warriors found themselves trapped under debris, while Ben stood safely in the center of the arena. "Victory through superior strategy," Queen Valana announced. "The trial of strength is past." The final trial took place in the simple chamber with the single chair. Ben sat facing the blank crystal wall, while the overseers gathered around him. The question, when it came, was delivered by Queen Valana herself. "Human Taurus, answer this riddle that has puzzled our greatest minds for centuries. What grows stronger when divided? It becomes nothing when whole." Ben closed his eyes and thought. He considered various mathematical concepts, physical principles, and philosophical ideas. The Zephyrians were a logical people who valued order and precision. What could grow stronger through division? Then he thought about Maria, about their marriage, and about the human connections that had shaped his life. He thought about his crew working together despite their different backgrounds and specializations. He thought about the colonies in the first trial, each contributing their strengths. "Love," he said finally, opening his eyes to look directly at Queen Valana. "Love grows stronger when divided because it multiplies instead of diminishing. The more people you love, the greater your capacity for love becomes. But when love becomes focused only on itself, when it doesn't reach out to others, it becomes nothing but selfishness." The chamber was silent for a long moment. The overseers looked confused, but Queen Valana's expression was thoughtful. "Explain this concept of love," she said. Ben stood from the chair. "Love is caring about someone else's well-being as much as your own. It's the bond between parents and children, between partners, between friends. It makes people stronger because they have others to support them and others worth fighting for." And how does this apply to leadership? A ruler who loves their people makes better decisions than one who only thinks about power. When you divide your attention between many subjects, caring about all of them, you become a stronger leader. But when you focus only on yourself, you become a tyrant who rules nothing worthwhile. Queen Valana rose from her throne and walked to where Ben stood. This concept of love, it exists among humans. It's the foundation of our society. It's why I'm here, risking my life for people I'll never meet. It's why my crew followed me across the galaxy. It's why my wife supported my mission, even though it meant leaving her behind. And you believe this love could exist between different species? Ben looked into her alien eyes and saw something familiar there. Something that transcended the barriers between their peoples. I believe understanding can grow between any intelligent beings who choose to care about each other's welfare. And Queen Valana turned to address the assembled Zephyrians. The trials are complete. The candidate has demonstrated leadership through innovation, strength through intelligence, and wisdom through concepts unknown to our people. He has passed all 3 trials. The response from the crowd was unlike anything Ben had heard before. Instead of the formal humming that marked ceremony, there was something that sounded almost like cheering. However, Queen Valana continued, raising her hand for silence, having passed the trials. The candidate has earned the right to choose his fate. Ben Torres of Earth, you may claim the rank of husband and rule beside me, or you may choose another path.
Oh.
Ben bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I am honored beyond words. But I believe there is a third option that would serve both our peoples better. Speak.
Asked.
Create a new rank that has never existed before. Make me your cultural bridge. Let me serve as permanent ambassador between humans and Zephyrians, learning your ways and teaching ours. Let our peoples grow in understanding through the kind of division that makes both sides stronger. Queen Valana was quiet for a long moment, her wings slowly spreading as she considered. You would refuse the throne to serve as a bridge between our worlds. I would accept an honor that lets me serve both our peoples while honoring the memory of the wife I loved. Then let it be so, Queen Valana declared. Ben Torres of Earth, you are hereby granted the rank of Cultural Bridge, the first of your kind, with authority to speak for both our peoples in matters of mutual interest. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Queen Valana approached Ben one final time. Your wife would be proud. She said quietly. I hope so, Ben replied. And I hope this is the beginning of something that will make both our peoples stronger. Queen Valana's compound eyes seemed to sparkle, with what Ben was learning to recognize as the Zephyrian equivalent of a smile. I believe Cultural Bridge Torres that it will be. 3 months later, the first joint human-Zephyrian research station was established in neutral space. Ben Torres found himself busier than he had ever imagined, facilitating communication between 2 very different species who were slowly learning to understand each other. Sometimes, late at night in his quarters aboard the research station, Ben would look out at the stars and think about Maria. She would have loved to see what was growing between humans and Zephyrians. A friendship based on mutual respect, curiosity about each other's differences, and the kind of love that grew stronger when shared with others. It had all started with a simple misunderstanding, a translation error that changed the course of history. But perhaps, Ben thought, the best things in life began with mistakes that taught you something new about yourself and the universe around you.